Hi, this is Joseph Wright for my second Global Learning Project video log. The topic of this video log is the first interaction between me and Miss Ava Leanne, discussing our educational backgrounds. I started this project by describing that my first interaction with Miss Leanne would be a interview of sorts. And that's exactly what happened. I held a very casual, very informal sort of interview in order to gain the best results and to hopefully more or less just have a conversation about our topic. What this led to was very surprising. I say that because there's not really a better term for me to describe how I ended up feeling about this interview. Because, as I mentioned in the previous video log, there have been many interactions with people of other cultures in my life, including people from Chinese culture, and this was still platonically different. I mentioned in the previous video log I even had a Chinese foreign exchange student on my swim team in high school, and I'd never really had this conversation with him, so having this sort of context actually just provided me with a sort of sense of satisfaction. So the first major difference between Miss Leanne's and mine high school education was what was being measured. In my high school education, it was just what you can do in this building that's away from your home and how you can perform academically in it. That's not the same case with her. She lived in dormitories, which did not become a factor of my education until I got here at Michigan State. And frankly, it gave her teachers more to measure, considering they could now see a sort of living environment and how that impacts. So they were held to certain standards of living, where she mentioned she would mop floors and all of these types of hygienic things that would be measured by their teachers, which was just kind of mind-blowing to me, considering it was just never really taken into account in my American education. Regardless, it was apparently very impactful on Miss Leanne, as she does very much maintain her own living space. The next major difference between the two of us was, as I mentioned, my education was just prepare to go to college. Get good grades so you can go to college. And that was similar in Chinese culture. However, they prepared differently, in the sense that we don't really center super difficultly on sort of standardized tests. Yes, they're administered nationwide, including the SAT, the ACT, in Michigan, the M-STEP, or as I knew it, the MEEP. And they were key parts of you going to college. However, I believe it's called the Gaokao, actually determined whether or not they would go to college. in America, you can get away with having a lower ACT or SAT score if your GPA balances out. If you do poorly on the Gaokao, you have to wait to retake it a full year before you are determined eligible to go to college. And that was just utterly shocking. Which honestly made me understand why there is a stereotype of Chinese students being good test takers. Because throughout high school education, they are prepared for a singular test. I took the SAT and the ACT my junior year of high school, and I wasn't overly stressed about either because I was an academically gifted student. However, I didn't feel overly pressured by school to have to perform very well on these tests. I didn't have to get above a 30 on the ACT. I didn't have to perform above a 1260 on the SAT. And that's not the case there. And that was just ridiculous. But the third and most significant difference to me was their concept of time. Despite the fact that their high school spans the same amount of time as American and specifically Midwestern high school does, there was, throughout their school days that she would describe to me, not a gigantic sense of urgency as specific blocks of time would be set out for different things. And granted, when your senior students' days end at 11 p.m., there's obviously some sort of extensions to breaks, but these breaks were set aside for some very different things. Miss Leanne mentioned and actually wrote down in a paper discussing this topic that she was provided a 2-hour block during the day to nap. Now, that's every American high schooler's dream. Specifically mine, because there were some classes where I just had to take that block anyway of nap time in high school because I was tired. But it's actually worked into their schedule because they want to feel adequately prepared for the next class. And that's just very different to me. Now I see how it has shaped us both to feel prepared for college. You could think that. However, Miss Leanne also did express that due to the rigidity, the heavy amount of structure that was given to her in her high school experience, the amount of freedom, the amount of self-sustenance that you must have in college with determining your own schedule, with determining your own blocks of time, has been the most difficult adjustment since she's gotten here. And that is the case for many Chinese students, is that the sense of freedom is almost overwhelming. And yes, that is the case with many American students. However, our school structures were much looser, much less rigid, much more malleable. And that's just the case of things. So, yeah, those are the basic differences in American and Chinese education. And for the next vlog, we'll be discussing the second interaction with Miss Leanne. Thank you very much.